Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming along today. It's great to see so many friendly faces, friends from many, many years involved in political life, and I'm just thrilled that you could be here today, and Gavin and I really thank you for that support. Can I particularly thank the AIP, Graham Young and your executive, Bob Tucker, other members that are here for facilitating this. And this is the start of about 4 weeks as we head up and down the east seaboard of Australia talking about this book, obviously promoting it, but also having a conversation, we hope, with Australians about some things that we wanted to say. A little bit more on that in a moment. Can I acknowledge both Leah King and of course Lisa and Sarah who are here today, our loved ones. And there's a lot said in the book about Lisa, but I really want to pay tribute to Leah and the family today, who did see, Leah and the kids saw Gavin for 3 years, do a lot of travel around Queensland, be away a heck of a lot at a time when the kids were really very, very young, and those are just the most beautiful years in any family. And Leah, I also thank you for the last 8 months as he's gone through this process. Ladies and gentlemen, what he has said is totally incorrect in the book in relation to the genesis of the book, but I'm not going to talk about it anymore because Leah might get cross at him, you see, because she's got the wrong version of events. Suffice to say that Ben Myers, my former Chief of Staff, who was a great servant of the City of Brisbane and the people of Queensland, did actually get us talking about a week after the election. And now Ben cannot be here today. Now I was going to actually defame him massively and say he said, I'm not interested in dealing with you anymore, Newman. We've got plenty of other things to do. But no, that's not the case. He's actually with his wife Anna Marsden, and she's literally having her baby, their second child, as I speak. So he had a very good excuse for not being here today. Can I also acknowledge all the other dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen? I really appreciate your attendance. Well, why do the book? Why cooperate in this venture? Well, very simply, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to tell my story. As Gavin said, as I said on radio a few hours ago, I don't recognise the Campbell Newman that was covered in the last 3 or 4 years. I really don't. And I really wanted to tell my story, my family's story, and indeed my ancestors' story as well. And you know, it's been absolutely fantastic that Gavin has done that. Gavin, I thank you publicly today for giving me the opportunity to tell the Newman story and the mullet story as well in Australia. I'm just so grateful, and particularly I did it for my kids and my grandkids, my future grandkids, because I wanted them to know who Grandpa was, what he was really trying to achieve. And the result is a very, very interesting and topical read. It is not a boring political tome. It's a story about people. It's a story about politics, yes, but it's told in a very entertaining and quite light way. So I know that you will enjoy Gavin's tale. It's not, as some have already tried to present, some sort of sycophantic effort. Gavin has covered it warts and all. There's a comment or two about me by Ben Myers that I've still yet to catch up with him on. Far too pointed. There's people here, I think probably Rob Cavallucci had something to do with saying I had some real character flaws about being too loyal. I'll deal with you later on. And there's some quite frank admissions about political failure and political mistakes. Having said that, the essential message in this book is that Australians are at a bit of a crossroads. We have to decide what we're really going to celebrate, what we're going to hold up as important to us. Are we going to hold up the pursuit of politics, the politics of politics, and say, gee whiz, isn't that great? So-and-so is a great politician. Or are we going to hold up good government? And there is a huge difference, ladies and gentlemen. A bit more on that later on. But in terms of the tale that Gavin has woven, it's great. It covers the actual antecedents of yours truly. Talks about the mullet family in Australia, was a great great story about a sea captain in our family. I think he was my great-great-grandfather who basically went out across the Pacific in the 1880s and 1890s catching sea lions, would you believe, selling them to zoos in the United States and also circuses. And he was the first person to figure out how to do that. Made $1 million by the time of the San Francisco earthquake and supposedly lost it all. That's the positive side of his story. The other side of it appears to have been a bigamist and a family deserter. But I'll move on. On the other side of the family, we have the story of Hannah and Herman, who came to Australia in 1854 on a Dutch ship, the Doctrina Amicitia, who then settled in St Peters in the southern suburbs of Sydney near the airport. And you'll see a photo of the home that the Newmans lived in for almost 100 years. I can tell you now, ladies and gentlemen, there's no silver spoon originally in the Newman family, and it tells that story. It tells a story about my mum and dad, how they met, a great romance, and the tragedy of my mother getting back to Canberra literally 3 or 4 hours after my father died, after travelling all the way across the globe. Sad story indeed. And they had a wonderful love affair. And that talks about how Lisa and Cam met and our journey together. And Peter Ruff is here today. Peter and Kathy Ruff are mentioned in that book. They were the people who brought us together, very, very old and dear friends. There are other people here today that I should recognise, people like Con Galtos. I was saying Con was there at the very, very beginning of my pre-selection in 2004, who stood up and actually argued that I should be pre-selected when certain people in the room, and I know who they were saying, why are we grabbing this guy for this position as our candidate for Lord Mayor? And then it covers, of course, the journey through both council and then state politics. So he's done a terrific job. But again, it's not some starry-eyed, isn't he a great bloke? It's got a lot of stuff about what went wrong, about mistakes that were made, and commentary from people who are critics as well. So I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, we owe him a great debt because he has done something not just for the Newman family, but also for the state of Queensland. It is right and proper that we record our history. It is right and proper, though, we reflect on the lessons of the last 3 or 4 years and what is going on in our country. And I just will say a few words on that before I conclude. And that is this. I firmly believe that we are heading in the wrong direction when it comes to the way that politics and government is being run in Australia. I do not resolve from that. In the last week, the media have sought to present that as Campbell Newman blaming the media. That is untrue. Nothing could be further from the truth. And in fact, another plug for the book. If you think that's what I'm saying, go and buy the book, read it, because we're not saying that at all. What we're saying, though, is that if you look at what's going on, there are some real problems. We've had 5 Prime Ministers in 5 years. We've had a number of premiers come and go in a very short period of time as well. I say to you, just if we focus on the Prime Ministers, that didn't happen 35, 40 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. It's destabilising. It's not doing us any good. And I hope and pray that Malcolm Turnbull does manage to change the whole tone of politics in Australia, because it needs to change. We have massive issues. The mining boom has ended. We're seeing the backwash effects of that. We're a high-cost economy. Our education system is not preparing our kids for the future that they will have in a world that is massively being disrupted by technological change, and our healthcare systems and social security systems are unsustainable. And yet, when any politician at the moment tries to propose solutions, undertake reform, the issues are being presented in black and white terms, as good and bad. And particularly what we're concerned about is the attack on individuals and their characters, when it should be the quality of the policy ideas, the thoughts that should be being debated. There is little debate in Australia today. There needs to be a whole lot more, and we need to celebrate good government, good thought leadership, and good political process, and good media commentary and reporting, rather than what we have been celebrating. Thank you so much for coming today. I think we now have Graham coming up to interview us, and I hope you enjoy the interview, and please ask us any questions that you like.